What's going on, everyone? So the Toronto Raptors, once again, another season, another disappointment. This time, they didn't even make the playoffs. They lost in the play-in to the Chicago Bulls and are sent home after having a 19-point lead in the third quarter. And look, it's been time for Toronto to blow it up for some time now. There was so much talks about them doing it at the trade deadline, and they decided not to, which is really interesting because they had a bunch of guys that are going to be free agents, and they could risk losing for nothing. So why not get some value out of those players? Because do you really want to resign them? Do you really want to re-sign Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. after just the poor performance that we've seen? The Toronto Raptors have built this team of long, defensive 3-and-D style wings, but they don't have reliable three-point shooting. They don't have reliable scoring. These are all very similar players, but they don't have that elite go-to scorer, right? Like if you put like a Donovan Mitchell or like a Kevin Durant on this roster, this team might be brilliant, right? Like this is a like similar version to like what OKC is building, but OKC is doing it in a better manner. They have better shooters, better scorers, SGA. Like Toronto really needs like that guy, possibly even two guys to kind of just be those go-to scorers, those guys down the stretch. Because you've seen the Raptors, they get hot and then they'll go 5, 6, 7 minutes without scoring. It happened to them last year in the playoffs and cost them that series. But they have a lot of nice young talent, a lot of nice pieces, but it's clearly time for a rebuild when it comes to Toronto. Nick Nurse, there's all the reports that very likely any day now, any moment, might have already happened, depending on when you watch this video, that Nick Nurse and the Toronto Raptors are going to go their separate ways, that it's just not working out, and that they're going to mutually part ways and not continue this marriage anymore. And this is a championship coach, right? This is a guy that had many people's eyes kind of turn water into wine with the Toronto Raptors, but Toronto doesn't seem to be heading in a positive direction. I don't think it's Nick Nurse. I think it's the roster, and I think Ujiri, I think he's kind of been just kind of stubborn and wants to, he's a guy that he likes to wait for the home run deal or like the big risk-taking deal. He doesn't mind taking risks. He doesn't mind swinging for the fences for a Kawhi Leonard or something like that. He's done it. He did it with the Knicks, right? It's something that he's always done. But sometimes it's okay to just, hey, let's retool, let's rebuild, let's move this piece and maybe go get this piece. And you don't always have to swing for the fences every time. You can put yourself in a position to where maybe 2-3 years down the line you'll be even better, especially a team like Toronto. Right, Toronto, it's not a huge free agent destination. You're not going to have a lot of these marquee stars that are going to want to go to Toronto. So you have to really put yourself in a position to where you can kind of homegrown guys or really build guys, and you're very likely losing your coach. So what coach are you going to get? Ime Udoka is somebody that's been linked, but I don't think it's the coaching. I think it's the roster. I just don't think you have the roster entail. You don't have the elite, athletic, quick-footed style of just 5 wings, right? Like you saw in the Oklahoma City. They're just group rebounding. They're athletic. They're quick. They're fast. They're good at the point of attack. They can all shoot the ball. They were undersized and still were just killing like the Timberwolves and stuff, the Pelicans. You see what they're building in OKC, but then you look at Toronto and it's just like they're a lot of like just long, slow-footed guys at times that, yeah, they're good defenders, but they're not great point of attack defenders, and they're not very quick, and it's not the same. Right, they have too many guys of the exact same players, exact same mold, rather than some of this different sort of Swiss Army knife type players, and they don't have that consistent go-to scorer that can just go get you a bucket. Right, you got to rely on like a Fred VanVleet to just shoot the lights out, or a Gary Trent Jr. to shoot the lights out, or Siakam to just play above his means. If Siakam is your best player, you're probably not winning a championship. And I like Siakam. I think Siakam is a great player. but he's not, in my opinion, a number one option. He's a guy that needs to be your second, third option. And we'll see what happens with Nick Nurse and the coaching situation. But got to build around Scotty Barnes. Honestly, you can make an argument, trade everybody, right? Like, you're probably losing Gary Trent, although you could probably keep Gary Trent because he's still young. He's like, 23, 24. So you could maybe build around Gary Trent and Scotty Barnes because Gary Trent's young enough to where he could evolve into something maybe. A solid 3-and-D guy. I think he has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. Same thing with Scotty Barnes. Those would kind of be my two pieces. I would just kind of keep those two and then build around those two guys. Scotty Barnes is their young talent, the guy that's really been the standout, the guy that would be a prize piece. And I don't think you trade him. Although, I mean, you probably could get quite the farm. Do you just hit a full reset and just say, hey, let's start from scratch and build the pieces that we want? Or do you keep Scotty Barnes and build around him? Again, personally, I would keep him, build around him. But I can see an argument for like, hey, let's just clean slate. Let's trade everybody away. But again, I would maybe look to re-sign Gary Trent. Keep Scotty Barnes. You got to trade Siakam at this point. I really do. Because he's 29, right? He's about to be 30. Not that that's old, right? He's just getting to his prime. But if you're going to hit a rebuild, by the time you get to where you want to be, Pascal Siakam's probably going to be at like towards the end of his prime or or maybe even out of his prime. So you might as well use him. Plus, he's the most valuable piece you have. If I'm the Raptors, I'm looking at a team like the Knicks or like the Jazz, right? A team like that have like a treasure trove of draft picks, especially like the Knicks. Could you get like an RJ Barrett and maybe a Grimes for Siakam? That's something. They might look at that and go, man, add Siakam to Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson and Mitchell Robinson, and like that could be a pretty formidable team. That could be something that they look at and go, hey, you know what? Like let's do that. Get some draft picks, get some young players. That could be nice for Toronto, or maybe a team like Utah. Maybe you could get again. They have like 11 or 12 first-round picks now, something insane like that. Could you go get a couple pieces, right? Get a piece or two that can come in and maybe have an impact. You're not going to get like a Lauri Markkanen or a Walker Kessler, but are other guys available? Can you get maybe a Jordan Clarkson, a bunch of firsts? I don't know. I mean, again, it's at least worth a conversation if you just want picks, especially if you're doing a rebuild. Just basically teams that have all this draft capital. I mean, even OKC. Would OKC want a Pascal Siakam to pair with an SGA, Chet Holmgren, kind of try to expedite their rebuild? That could be something. But Toronto, I just think Siakam's the guy you got to trade. He's the guy that unfortunately is the odd man out. I like Siakam. I think he's great, but move him. You should have done it at the trade deadline. And then same thing with Fred VanVleet. Again, Gary Trent, I wouldn't mind seeing Toronto keep him. But Fred VanVleet, he's older. You should have traded him at the trade deadline. You really should have. It was, in my opinion, it was foolish that they didn't, because you had a lot of teams, especially a team like the Clippers. The Clippers probably would have gave you whatever you wanted that they could have possibly given you for Fred VanVleet. I think they would have given you all their picks. They would have given you, you wanted a couple guys. You probably could have gotten a couple guys, maybe some of their young guys at the end of the bench. I think you could have gotten a lot for Fred VanVleet. Orlando was another team that really wanted him. Now Orlando can just go sign him if they want. I just think you're probably losing him for nothing, or you're going to have to overpay him. And if you're Toronto, why in the world would you pay him? Right? Like, this team isn't working, and you're going to tie yourselves into it long term? It just doesn't make any sense. Right? Trade Siakam. If you can, maybe sign and trade Fred VanVleet, but I don't really see a team that's going to want to hard cap themselves for Fred. So you basically just lost Fred for nothing. keep Gary Trent, and and just start hitting that rebuild. It sucks that you're going to lose Fred VanVleet for nothing, but you had an opportunity and you squandered it. That's your fault. Sometimes you just got to eat it. Where it would have been nice, even if you could have gotten a first for him. Like, who cares? Just do it. You weren't winning anything this year, even at the time of the trade deadline. It wasn't. You knew that they weren't winning anything anyway. It was just silly. The asking price was too insane. You had several teams that wanted him. I mean, even the Lakers probably would have given you. I mean, there were talks about both firsts for Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet. Like, at least you would have gotten 2 first-round picks for those guys, rather than you might lose them for nothing. Even Gary Trent could just leave. So you could lose Gary Trent for nothing, right? It's like, why? So what? You could not make the playoffs? It was foolishness. It was stubbornness, in my opinion. And then OG Anunoby. Look, he is an incredible young talent. He has probably, I mean, you can make an argument he has the most potential at anybody. I think Scotty Barnes is up there, but OG is still 25, and he's already one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. 3-and-D, everything you could want. Young, talented, plenty of upside. You'd imagine only get better. Kind of has like that Kawhi Leonard demeanor, but do you use him as another piece, right? Like, again, if you're going to hit a rebuild, he's 25. Say it takes you 3 years to turn the rebuild around. Yeah, he's still only 28, but like, do you prefer to do that rather than going and get several pieces, right? I mean, granted, like, let's say, for example, you trade Siakam to the Knicks, right? And you get RJ Barrett and Grimes. That's 2 guys that could play alongside OG, but I just think you could you should be able to get at least probably 2 young players and 2 or 3 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam. You could probably get the same, maybe even more for OG Anunoby. So could you get, for OG and Pascal, could you get 4 young players and 4 or 5 first-round picks? It's a pretty good rebuild, right? Like, that's a pretty good place to be. That, or go get a star. They'll use an OG Anunoby to maybe go get a Damian Lillard, right? Could you go do that and then add Lillard to like Pascal Siakam and all the pieces that you have? Maybe then you keep Fred VanVleet. You could have like Fred, Lillard, OG, Barnes, and Siakam, right? Siakam and Siakam, right? And you're trading OG Anunoby and then some firsts and maybe you throw in a Gary Trent. There you go. That could be something. But whatever it is, the Raptors really do have to figure it out. They have to come to some conclusion. I think it's long overdue. When you keep seeing the same result year in and year out, and it's just not working, and it's clearly not working, it's time to hit the reset button. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Think yes, trade OG, trade Siakam, trade both of them, let Fred go. What would you do? What would be your plan? I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below.